It started as a story about young love, but it ended in tragedy. What makes this case even more disturbing is what the killer did afterward. He didn't just take the life of the woman he claimed to love and her dog. He also made a shocking FaceTime call, and the person on the other end witnessed everything he had just done. Taking a life never makes sense. No reason or excuse can ever justify it. And the case we're talking about today, from Arizona, is one of those that leaves you asking why. Authorities say a man named Tate Dorfman shot and killed his girlfriend, Hannah Rogers, and even her dog. But what happened after that makes the story even more disturbing. Hannah Rogers was 30 years old. Her family describes her as kind, smart, and full of life. She was the type of person who made everyone around her smile. This photo of her, taken at her sister's wedding in 2023, shows just that light in her personality. At that same wedding, she was with her boyfriend, Tate. She later made one of those pictures her profile photo on social media. In the comments, Tate wrote, "I love this picture, my beautiful love of mine." Hannah replied, "Thank you for loving me, baby." He answered again, "You don't need to thank me, you're worth loving." On the surface, they look like a happy couple. Tate's profile still shows pictures of them together. And he's also a father, often smiling in photos with his kids, which makes what happened next even more confusing. On July 28, 2024, around 10:30 p.m., police were called to the couple's home near Tucson, Arizona. When officers arrived, they made a devastating discovery. Hannah had been fatally shot, and her dog was also found dead. Investigators say the person responsible was the same man who, less than a year earlier, called her worth loving. But what he did next was beyond shocking. Instead of calling for help, Tate reportedly made a FaceTime call to his ex-girlfriend. According to police reports, during that call, he confessed to what he had done. The woman on the other end immediately took a screenshot and contacted authorities. When officers arrived, they had to call in a SWAT team because Tate had barricaded himself inside the home. After several tense hours, he finally surrendered. Police said he was taken into custody with visible signs of blood and a handgun nearby. Investigators haven't released a clear motive, but they did find evidence of drug use and alcohol in the home. Tate Dorfman has since appeared in court to face charges connected to the tragedy. In court, Tate Dorfman, now 30 years old, faced serious charges: second-degree murder for taking Hannah Rogers' life, and animal cruelty for killing her dog. On September 4th, the jury found him guilty on both counts. This week, a judge in Pima County, Arizona, sentenced him to 16 years in prison. That sentence might sound lighter than expected for such a tragic case, but there's a reason. According to local reports, prosecutors told the court they regretted not including aggravating factors in the case, which would have allowed for a longer sentence. Because of that, the judge said the maximum penalty available under law was 16 years. Dorfman also received credit for time already served on the animal cruelty charge. His defense team had asked for a 10-year sentence, arguing that he wanted to be able to provide for his children. In court, Dorfman addressed the judge and said, "I'm not a killer. I'm not a murderer." No one knows how they'd react unless they were in that situation. Despite everything, Hannah Rogers' family responded with remarkable grace. Her sister-in-law told reporters that she had forgiven Dorfman, saying that Hannah wouldn't have wanted her family to carry the pain of anger or hatred. A GoFundMe page created in Hannah's memory has raised more than $11,000, helping the family cover expenses and honor her life. As for Dorfman, he will be in his mid-40s when he's released, if he serves the full sentence. Records show that this isn't his first run-in with the law. Public records indicate prior arrests, including one in 2014 for drug possession. When it comes to this case, we don't have much footage or information. From inside the courtroom, cameras weren't allowed during the trial. But one detail from the reporting really stood out. During sentencing, prosecutors actually admitted they made a mistake. They said they should have included what are called aggravating factors, something that could have increased the possible prison time. It's not often you hear a prosecutor publicly acknowledge that kind of error. So what are aggravating factors exactly? Most states have them, and Arizona is no different. They include things like using a deadly weapon, causing serious harm or death, or committing a crime in a particularly cruel or heartless way. And in this case, many believe those factors could have applied. Not only did Tate Dorfman take Hannah's life, but he also killed her dog and later made a call to brag about it. Those details alone might have met the criteria for an aggravated charge. A legal expert explained that, adding, "These factors doesn't require a massive amount of extra work for prosecutors." After a major Supreme Court decision in 2004, known as Blakely 5, Washington, the law requires that any aggravating circumstances must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, just like the main charge itself. So, in practical terms, the prosecutor simply needs to present those added details to the jury, things that show the crime was exceptionally cruel or deliberate. In this case, that step might have led to a longer sentence had it been included. The jury didn't hesitate in finding Tate Dorfman guilty, and honestly, if they had also been asked to decide whether his actions were cruel or deliberate, beyond a reasonable doubt, most people believe they would have said yes to that too. Something that really stands out in this case is how much evidence there was. Dorfman admitted what he did, and even called his ex-girlfriend right after the crime. Thankfully, she acted quickly. She took screenshots during the FaceTime call and immediately contacted police, which helped them respond right away. Investigators also found signs of drug use and alcohol inside the home. That led some to wonder, could intoxication have played any role in the verdict or the type of charge he faced? Legal experts say that being under the influence usually isn't a defense in a case like this, while it might sometimes reduce a charge if it affects a person's intent. For example, if they were so impaired they didn't fully understand their actions, that kind of argument has to be formally presented in court, and there's no record showing that was done in Dorfman's trial. So in the end, the evidence, his confession, and his actions after the fact all pointed clearly to guilt. When it came to the animal cruelty charge, many people were surprised that Tate Dorfman only received a misdemeanor. It's important to say this: the life of an animal absolutely matters. But legally, most states only classify the killing of an animal as a felony if it meets specific conditions. For example, if the animal was a police dog or a service animal that assisted someone with a disability. In this case, the law treated it as a misdemeanor. Dorfman's total sentence still added up to 16 years, which was the maximum the judge could give under the circumstances, since aggravating factors weren't included. Even so, many feel that 16 years seems like a light punishment for taking two lives, one human and one animal. In most states, a conviction for second-degree murder usually carries between 20 and 25 years, depending on the state laws and whether the person has prior felonies. Arizona's sentencing structure can vary, so it's possible that this case fell into a lower category of second-degree murder. Dorfman's defense team had argued for a 10-year sentence, pointing out that he's a father with several children and claiming he wanted the chance to provide for them someday. But in serious violent crimes, that argument rarely makes a difference. Judges typically consider the gravity of the act itself, and as one expert pointed out, being a parent doesn't excuse taking someone else's life. During sentencing, Dorfman reportedly said, "I'm not a killer. I'm not a murderer." But he had already been convicted of exactly that. Statements like that, especially when they show no real remorse, can actually hurt a defendant more than help. In court, judges often look for accountability, not denial. When someone refuses to take responsibility, it makes leniency far less likely. And in this case, that may have reinforced the judge's decision to give the maximum sentence allowed under the law. When it comes to sentencing, what a defendant says in court can make a difference, or it can make things worse. In most cases, if you've been found guilty, the best thing you can do is take responsibility. Judges often want to see some level of remorse, a genuine apology, an acknowledgement of what happened, and some sign that you understand the pain you've caused. But when someone stands before a judge and insists, "I'm not a killer," after a jury has already convicted them of murder, it usually backfires. Instead of helping, it tells the court that the person hasn't accepted the truth. And that makes it hard for a judge to show any leniency. Judges hear emotional statements from both sides, from victims, families who are grieving, and from defendants hoping for mercy. Those hearings can last hours. But when the sentence is finally read, the decision often comes in seconds. That's because, more often than not, judges already have a strong idea of what the sentence will be before walking into the courtroom. Most of the work leading up to that moment happens weeks before. Defense attorneys usually try to send letters of support, psychological evaluations, or personal background information ahead of time, hoping the judge will review it before making up their mind. By the time sentencing day arrives, those earlier materials usually carry more weight than any last-minute courtroom plea. And while the legal side of this case may be over, the emotional side never really is. It's hard to imagine what Hannah Rogers' family has endured, losing someone so loving and full of life in such a violent way. Many people say they could never forgive someone who did something like this. But in court, Hannah's sister-in-law chose a different path. She said she forgives Taten Dorfman, not because what he did was excusable, but because holding on to hate would only deepen their pain. Forgiveness, she said, was a way to let go of that weight, to honor Hannah's memory with peace instead of bitterness. Even though Taten Dorfman received the maximum sentence, some people wondered if the family's forgiveness could have influenced the outcome. The truth is, in murder cases, forgiveness rarely changes the sentence. Judges may appreciate seeing a victim's family find peace or closure, but when a life has been taken, the law is often very clear. In other kinds of crimes, like robbery, assault, or theft, a victim's forgiveness can sometimes help. If a victim stands in court and says, "I've moved past this, I understand their situation, and I forgive them," it can show the judge that real healing is possible. But in a case involving death, that grace doesn't usually affect the punishment. It's more about helping the family find their own sense of peace. When this story first broke, many were horrified not just by the violence, but by what Dorfman did afterward, calling his ex-girlfriend on FaceTime and showing her the aftermath of his crime. It's the kind of disturbing decision that makes you wonder how someone could do something so cruel. But to many people who work in criminal law, it wasn't all that surprising. In today's world, social media has become a kind of digital diary, and far too many people can't resist posting or recording their worst choices. Prosecutors often find key evidence online, photos of guns, drugs, or messages bragging about crimes. Those posts can destroy any chance of defense and make a bad situation even worse. Defense attorneys say it happens more than anyone would believe. A single post, a picture, a short video, or even a message can undo months of legal work. And while it's easy to blame the internet, it also shows how reckless some people have become about their actions and how they present themselves online. In the end, Hannah Rogers' story is one of love that turned tragic, a young woman's life taken far too soon. And while Dorfman will spend 16 years behind bars, that sentence represents only part of the loss. Her family will carry the pain of what happened forever, even as they choose to forgive.